definitely need hearing protection, eye protection of some kind. I use eyeglasses. They work fine for me. This is a nice leggings. They have special ripstop nylon inside. So if you were to accidentally hit your leg with the chain, it would rip through this, and the fibers inside would jam the saw before it could get to your flesh. Two-cycle engines create a lot more air pollution than four-cycle engines, but they are also a simpler design, and they usually run at a higher rate, a higher RPM they call, rounds per minute.
Right.
So when you hear a motorcycle,
that's also two-cycle?
You can tell the difference between two-cycle and four-cycle motorcycle engines by the pitch of the sound they make, the engine makes.
Okay.
The four-cycle ones have a boo, and the two-cycle motorcycle engines are really high pitch.
High
anyway.
pitch. Okay.
So there's a number of safety features. This switch has 4 positions. 0 is off. 1 is for running. You always have to start it in the bottom
and then you pull the
position.
thing, right? You go.
Yeah, we'll get to that. If you look inside the carburetor, you'll see there's a round plate in the throat of the carburetor, and choking closes that plate. It only allows a small amount of air in, and then you get a richer fuel mixture, and then it starts in colder temperatures. As soon as it runs, you go back to just a regular setting. Also has a fuel gauge. It shows you the level of fuel, which I think is either full or empty. I think it's empty. Okay. So chain.
Separate well for this chain oil.
This is called a chain saw because this thing is a continuous chain. You know, it's flexible. These are the teeth that do the actual cutting. In front of them is our what they call guides that control the depth of the cut. What you want to see when you're cutting is chips, like little chips of wood rather than dust. If all you're getting is fine sawdust, it's probably because the teeth are dull or the guides need to be adjusting. And there's a special oil called bar and chain oil. That's the brand, Husqvarna. So bar and chain oil is what you use to lubricate the chain, and it goes into a special chamber here at the front. If you remove this cover, okay.
You get a lot of crud.
Well, I cleaned it. There's no point in getting too clean because it gets dirty right away.
Right.
The engine drives this sprocket here, which drives the chain only one direction. It goes this way, so that the cutting edge is, is on the
it's like
downside.
Little rounded blade.
Yeah, I mean you can feel it.
Right?
It's sharp, and it should be quite sharp.
What's those spikies?
This is, I'll show you how that works when we're operating it.
It looks funny.
It's so when you have the bar there and you're cutting, you can jam this.
Okay.
And then use the chainsaw as a lever. You lever it on this fulcrum point. You can lever the saw down rather than you pushing with your weight. If the saw is running properly and the chain is sharp, the weight of the saw should do the cutting.
Because it's kind of heavy.
It's fairly heavy, and this is not a big saw. This is a medium-sized saw. So now this wheel doesn't turn anymore. Okay, that's called a chain brake, and you pull the handle back to reset it. Now it turns. And it works like this. Most injuries with a chainsaw happen with something called kickback, where as you're cutting into something, the bar gets pinched, and the movement of the chain causes the front of the saw to come up. And when it does that, it's supposed to do this. See what
And
happens?
then it stops.
Then the chain instantly, not instantly, but within
Seconds.
a half a second or something, it stops the movement of the chain before it can do any damage. If that happens, then you just reset it, and then you can tighten it, and then you secure it.
So this motor, when it runs, creates torque, right? So
Yeah.
if this gets jammed at all, that torque is still happening. The motor's still torquing.
Now he wants your attention, man.
You don't go past your center of gravity. You know what I mean? Like reaching,
You don't,
once
like,
you're
reach
once
it.
you're past that point, you can't stop this from happening.
Basically, where you're not feeling strained. I mean, the other side of it too. Just even assuming that nothing goes wrong, right? If you're extended, because that's how many pounds?
40?
Or how many kilos?
10 kilos,
10 kilos?
12.
Yeah. So I mean, like, you want to be
Yeah,
most
like
comfortable
25,
where you can handle
25
that.
pounds.
You're cutting, great. And then you want to move, you take, I release the,
And then the
you see
chain-
there, you see this? You can't pull the trigger
And that's the safety on
unless
top?
that's,
Some kind of safety?
it's a safety. So you know, you have to have your hand on here, fully on here. So when I'm repositioning, I fully release the trigger. You don't leave the saw, you know, running full blast and then go anywhere. You know, you don't
Not
move.
safe. You could trip and fall.
I mean,
Now it's the exhaust port right out the front.
yeah, that was actually the only servicing I've ever done for this machine. Was it stopped running. I couldn't get it to start. I took it into Hillsburg Feed and Supply. They do small engines, and they said there was a spark arrest filter. It's kind of a metal screen behind here that had gotten clogged, and the engine couldn't aspirate, so it wouldn't start. And
Yep.
they just tossed it because they said, "Oh, you don't need that anyway." It's more if you're a forestry worker and you're working in the woods where there's you know, where the underbrush is tinder dry, and a spark arrest is important. But
Oh yeah.
you know, he's pretty fat.
Meow.
Starting the saw, we fueled it up.
Mm,
You
bolts.
got fuel, you got chain oil, you check the chain tension, that's fine. The chain brake is off.
Seems an odd time of day.
Let's do some cutting.
Just washing them. Did you see where the pukas went?
I thought he was going that way. What? Huh?
Okay, let's go over here. So there's two basic operations cutting trees. Felling, which is bringing the tree down on the ground, and bucking, which is cutting the tree up into manageable sections. Okay, so felling a tree, that'll be for another day. The recommendation is that when you run the saw, you run it as close to full throttle as you can. It needs to be running at top speed all the time. Okay,
Okay.
and that's what it's designed to do. I want you to do this cut for me.
Okay.
Do the top first. Then work your way down each leg. Just pick it up first. left hand. You know, just move it around and feel the weight of it. Straight cut. Okay, and you see where you want to be cutting. Well, come over this side. You want to be positioned not with your foot under the tree, because that's after you cut that, it's going to fall back. Okay, so left foot forward, right foot back, left foot on the left hand on the handle in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay, right hand there. So you want to cut as close to the saw as you can.
I want to get a picture with me when the chainsaw.
Of course, sweetie.
And because look how good this matches my
You
sweater.
look gorgeous,
Oh, yeah.
Angel.
So to start, so it just goes to the start position. Your hand is pushing down, right?
then you pull
Your
the
weight's on it. This foot is on the back end.
All right.
Okay, so the saw ain't going anywhere. What you don't want is to do this. You don't want the saw
Did
to
you go into the ground?
go into the ground.
Is this okay?
Pushing the saw down, yeah, it's designed that anti-vibration mount,
Okay.
because there's a huge amount of vibration. You'll find if you run a saw for a while that your hands start getting numb or tingling,
Right.
and then it's time to stop. This hand is keeping the saw on the ground. Your foot is making sure it doesn't tip, and then you grab this and give it a sharp pull.
Okay.
Give it a shot. Okay, here's what's happening. You're listening, right?
Yeah.
You're hearing the saw. It's running, and then the tone starts to go down, which means it's bogging. It's
Okay.
not clearing the chips. So you have to.
Keep pushing.
No, if you keep pushing, it'll stop, which is what it did. The pitch starts to drop, which means it's slowing down. So you have to release, come back a little bit on the pressure. This is called a micro chain, the safety chain, okay?
Okay.
It's not very aggressive. So it's easy to bog it down. You can take a look, right? That's what it's doing. So it's just taking each tooth is taking one thin slice
Right.
out. And if you're cutting too quickly, the chips build up in the cut, and then the chain slows down because there's too much. The chips aren't being thrown
Back.
away; they're building up. So you got to ease up on the pressure. The other way to do it is you do this. See what I mean? You're just rocking the saw. And that instead of cutting a big chunk of wood, it's cutting a smaller piece
A couple times.
back and forth.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
That's the principle. Anyway,
So should I restart it?
make sure it's in the on position.
Okay, Alisha, as a police officer, shut it off. The same principle that you use with carrying a gun or a rifle, you always do with your chainsaw. Whenever you are finished with your cut, your finger immediately goes off the trigger. So bring your hand all the way there. Especially if you're moving the saw, your finger needs to be off the trigger right away. Same with carrying a gun or a rifle.
Is you took your eyes off the cut.
Okay.
Do you recall that? What happened? You moved and you looked up.
Yeah.
And you can't do that when you're running a chainsaw.
Yeah.
You know, wherever your head is going, your hands are going too. You know what I mean?
Like in driving.
So I mean, if you're gonna take your eyes off the cut, you gotta take your hands off
Trigger.
the throttle, and
Yeah.
then you can look at something. But once you start a cut, that's the only thing you're looking at. You know, you move the saw until the chain started moving again, so that was fine.
Do you have a good shot of me?
Oh, of course, sweetie. You look fantastic.
Yeah,
I
what's
just
your
like that the
shop is
chat
still
matched
open?
my sweater.
You're still advertising it.
That's what I care about.
Um,
Look at these
I've
goats.
seen a couple of horses. They have 3 horses, I think. I've seen them out in the front, those front paddocks by the road. I've seen them out occasionally. But that's
I turn
it.
some heads.
And they've still got the peacock.
You ready if I wear this?
Well,
You are awesome, Alicia.
I don't know.
Pea hens or chicken hens?
No, they're both. He's got a couple
Just
of pea
do
hens
it.
and a pea.
That's what I always say.